Book Blitz. Welcome.
Blitz.
Welcome to Eldest. And oh boy, this is book 2 of The Inheritance Cycle by Christopher Paolini. And if you guys joined us for our journey through Aragon, you already know how we feel about this series. If you did not, though, to very briefly sum up, we grew up with these books. We loved them as a kid, but over the years, we've kind of realized there's a lot of issues with these books, and we started having a bunch of conversations about them over the years as friends, and that eventually led to us doing this podcast. So without a whole lot of preamble, I do want to touch on what this book actually is a little bit before we get started, but I wanted to start with you. From what I remember when we were talking about a lot of the stuff in Aragon, I think you were saying that Eldest is actually, of the 4 books, probably your favorite. Is that still the case?
Well, we're talking about, like, if I can have a favorite in this series, which I'm not even sure is possible at this moment. But if I could, I thought it was this one. At least, a more accurate statement would be that when I was a kid and I read all these books like crazy, and I was like, these are the best things ever. That Eldest was my favorite book, and the main reason that was the case was because that's when you get Roran introduced as a character that is written about and not just existing. And so that was the main reason I liked it so much. I mean, as I've gotten into it now, however, I mean, just being older and it just not being as good as it was when you're a kid and you can't see the stuff that's wrong with it. It is struggling. It is struggling hardcore. It's better than Aragon, much better, in fact. Even though I read it and I kind of still didn't really like the beginning. In comparison to it, oh my gosh, does it starts better. Like not the first chapter exactly, but just the beginning gist of it all starts better. Like just by the sheer fact that you aren't having because Paolini's exposition like Satan. Like he will trap you in exposition hell as often as he possibly can. And
Exposition Satan?
Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, but if he has an opportunity.
So what you're saying is
God,
the devil's in the details?
God.
Aha!
Dude. Oh, jeez. Man. God, that hurts. I'm sorry. I'm sorry that I even set that up.
So
I didn't
glad
even mean
I
to set
did
that
that.
up.
I'm so glad
That was genuine. God, fuck, that was bad. Anyway, sorry. Jeez. But dude, he'll trap you in exposition hell. Like, anything that occurs, he'll tell you why it happened, how it happened, what happened before it, what happened after it, just so that you know perfectly this entire situation, and you didn't need to know. Like, and it's not really relevant to what's actually happening. Anyway, and so, I'm trying to remember where I was going with that. Exposition hell. Yeah, that joke threw me off. But just
You were saying that you thought overall the beginning of this book is stronger.
And the reason, and because, in the, if Paolini is exposition Satan, and he wants to trap you in an exposition hell, what better time to do it than in the beginning of the series where nothing's ironed out?
Yeah.
You still get trapped in exposition hell in this one, but at least you get the benefit of being trapped in an exposition hell in which you at least kind of already know stuff. So, anyway.
So, I think that overall, Eldest is definitely a better book than Aragon. Now, we mentioned this a while back, but as a refresher, I read Aragon many times over the years, but I've only actually read through Eldest, I think, once. And Eldest is kind of unique because in the series, it is both probably one of the strongest entries, and in my opinion, in some ways, one of the weakest ones. As far as actual plot is concerned, I think Aragon is a stronger book just because of what actually happens in it. And we made a lot of Star Wars comparisons in our Aragon series, and this is where a lot of those really start getting egregious. If Aragon was a parallel to A New Hope, this book is definitely a parallel to The Empire Strikes Back in a lot of ways. And I think that probably the biggest ways those happen are toward the end of the book, so we'll talk about those when we get there. But before we actually jump in the book, though, I do want to, for those of you who didn't join us for Aragon, kind of refresh your memory and explain how all this works. So basically, Book Blitz is a daily book review podcast. Every day we are covering a new chapter in a book. In this particular series, we're going to be going back and forth each day between this book, Eldest, and either Twilight, New Moon, or Eclipse, because I honestly think we'll go through all three of those by the time we end this book, because it's so long. But we're also kind of going back and forth between those books. But basically, each day, we are going to be discussing each chapter of the book until we reach the end. And what we encourage you to do is read along with us. We'll be kind of summarizing the chapters as we go, but you'll probably have the most enjoyment of this show if you are reading along with us. And what we encourage you to do is kind of read each chapter maybe like the day before, and then you're listening to our podcast the next day. We put out our podcasts every single day at 12 p.m. Central, so you know exactly when these are going out.
We'll know. We know
also,
if you aren't listening, but we know you know.
Also, to you in particular, Jimmy, we just want to say thanks. As well as to just the number of viewers that we have at the moment. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you for your excitement. I saw several people who were excited for us to start this book. So just thank you. Thank you for all the support, and we hope that you'll enjoy this. So, Aragon was a story about a boy who finds a dragon egg, becomes a dragon rider with the help of basically Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Yep.
Travels across a big world, has all sorts of adventures, and eventually gets a best friend named Murtagh who's edgy and has a dark past. Has a really awesome, deep, and fulfilling relationship with an elf girl who's unconscious for half their relationship, which is what makes it so great.
I mean, as far as Aragon's concerned, that's what makes it great. Like, he can just kind of
all ends
unabashedly stare.
In one big battle scene against this evil empire's army beneath a dwarven mountain. And in this final battle, Aragon was very badly wounded. He's recovered somewhat, but he was wounded. And now, Eldest. Chapter 1, A Twin Disaster.
Man,
and in my opinion,
that opening, dude, that
well, I was right about to say, in my opinion, you said in Aragon that the opening line of wind howled through the night carrying a scent that would change the world was pretty horrendous. In my opinion,
this is worse.
This opening line is far worse.
Well, okay, can we just get over, like, spoilers? What happens in this chapter is because of the twins. If you didn't know, I'm gonna go and tell you that. Spoilers, deal. And so the opening of this chapter, a twin disaster. I'm so clever. I'm the best author there ever was.
It works. I mean, when you think about it.
No, Clark. You and your dad jokes can get out of here. The rest of us find it horrendous.
I'm not telling a dad joke. I'm saying it works on two different levels. On the one hand, there are two disasters, but it is also because of the twins. So it is kind of a clever title.
No, it is not.
I don't knock it.
Bad.
No, it is. It's pretty clever.
No.
It's got
you're
like
the guy who laughs at the
built-in
oxygoron jokes. Like, You can't go.
I
It's
made that joke up. Of course I laugh at
like
it.
this is bad humor. This is not good. Like it is just painful.
Well, it's not humor. It's not humor. It's like
it's not humor.
I think it's clever.
It's not. Nah, man. Nah.
Okay, but we can agree. What we both can agree on is the opening line is awful, and here is that opening line: "The songs of the dead are the lamentations of the living." So thought Aragon as he stepped over a twisted and hacked Urgle, listening to the keening of women who removed loved ones from the blood-muddied ground of Farthen Dur. The songs of the dead are the lamentations of the living. Here's the reason to me why this line doesn't work. And yes, it is super cheesy, and that's not why though. To me, the reason it doesn't work is because, and we're going to see this big time in the next few chapters especially, gone, long gone, is the simpleton farm boy we knew in the very early chapters of Aragon. He was gone about halfway through the first book, honestly. He was replaced by someone who could wrestle with philosophical dilemmas that really should have been beyond the scope of his comprehension based on who he was, his age, his life experience, and his upbringing. But in this book, we're about to have Aragon not only wrestle with philosophical issues and talk like a freaking philosopher, even though, let me remind you, he is, at the time, a 16-year-old farm boy who has basically been on a super fantasy road trip for the last, I think, 6 months. He did not know how to read.
I'm sorry. That is a great band name.
What is?
Super Fantasy Road Trip. That is
super fantasy. Okay, yeah, that is.
I call it so hardcore.
Super fantasy road trip. Oh my gosh. But okay, so let's recap Aragon's life here. About 6 to 8 months ago, he discovers a mystical, magical blue stone. I say discovers. What really happened is a magic blue stone exploded into existence a few feet away from him. He took it home, and the most anybody really had to say about it was, "So how was the weather?" That egg turns out to be a dragon egg, and a dragon hatches. He becomes a dragon rider, goes on a road trip with an old storyteller who teaches him all this mysterious knowledge that the guy really has no right to have about dragon riders and how to take care of a dragon, how to fight. In that next few months, Aragon becomes one of the greatest swordsmen ever.
Yeah, by fighting with one dude.
After what, like 2 months of practice?
Yeah, like fighting with one dude.
Fighting against one guy. And oh, by the way, he does it left-handed. Just a reminder there. He then learns how to read pretty fluently in the course of about a week. He comes up with all sorts of brilliant plans on how to track down these two evil assassins that murdered his family, using knowledge that really should have been completely foreign to him, talking about shipping records and keeping records of different shipments of various goods that would be in a coastal town. Then, just for good measure, while he's in that coastal town, he alone is the one who comes up with the idea of what town those things were most likely shipped to from the various options. Keeping in mind, again, this is a 16-year-old farm boy whose experience of the world has largely been a series of plains and small villages. And that's about it. But all that aside, let's just say it's been a really rough few months for him. You know, his mentor died, and somehow that flipped the switch in his brain that went from simpleton to philosopher. And not only philosopher, but he is about to engage in, honestly, to me, kind of bafflingly complex for his character, political intrigue. And we're going to get to that too. But first, we find Aragon saying about the corpse of a twisted and hacked Urgle, which, for those of you who didn't join us for Aragon, are basically orcs. The songs of the dead are the lamentations of the living.
God, it is such a pretentious opening statement, though. Like, so thought Aragon. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's as though like that so thoughting is just like so powerful. You know what I mean? As though it was like a strike into
so
the earth.
thought he.
You know?
So let it be written, so let it be done.
Like it's just bad. Well, and it ends up it's just one of those sentences you write. Like I can get when you're writing, like you write that sentence to just kind of start the scene. But when you go back and edit that shit, that stuff's got to go. You know what I mean? You go, okay, let me get rid of this like pointless sentence that just got me into the mood of writing.
Well, the problem with it is, to me, is not the line itself. It's the fact that it's dialogue. It's the fact that this is Aragon saying it.
No. Is he
if
saying
this had
it?
been a narrative, yeah, this is Aragon. It says, so thought Aragon. This is Aragon in character saying this, which I don't buy at all.
Wait,
That's the problem with it. Like, I wouldn't have as much of a problem with it if it was just the narrator.
You know, the songs of the songs of the dead are the lamentations of the living. You know what I mean? Like, and then end quotation mark. So thought Aragon.
Yeah, that's my problem with it. It's that this is a line of dialogue essentially coming from Aragon. Aragon is basically the one saying this to us, the reader, anyway. So, but enough about the opening line. Aragon is kind of wandering around the battlefield. And at the end of the last book, there was an enormous battle with all these orcs. And a shade, which is basically like a super vampire that can use magic. And Aragon fought and defeated the shade Durza. 3 days later, Eldest begins, and Aragon is kind of wandering around this battlefield with Saphira. Aragon apparently, in the battle with Durza, when he was cut across his back, that wound seems to have been infected in some sort of magical way by Durza. It's almost like being stabbed by a Nazgul in The Lord of the Rings. It's like a corrupted wound. It's like it's got some sort of foul magic about it. And it's caused Aragon to have these kind of seizures, these extremely painful seizures that come from his back. And so he's not sure what's going on with that. And these seizures are going to become a staple of this book, just a heads up.
God, that's just like... the seizures, they don't go away for a while. You know what I mean? Like, they're here to stay. Like,
Well, but no, here's the thing. The reason I say that is because when they do go away, it is some bullshit.
No, yeah, obviously. That is true. That is some serious crap.
We'll get there. But this is important because it is, oh my God, every problem the series has is Deus Ex Machina it away. Anyway.
Or rather, sometimes more accurately, not always, but often, Deus Ex Saphira. Like,
yeah, Deus Ex Dragona.
yeah, Deus Ex Dragona. There we go.
So, we pretty much a big chunk of this chapter is a sort of reminding the reader of what happened in the previous book and kind of updating us on how things are going now. So, as this book opens, the leader of the Varden, which is a group of rebels that stands against the evil empire, Ajihad, has left on an expedition to hunt down the remaining orcs that were not killed in the battle. Aragon's good friend Murtagh, the edgy dude with a dark past, went with him. And they haven't returned yet, and they are about to return from one of these tunnels in this city mountain. And Ajihad's second in command comes up to Aragon. He says, "Hey, they're about to come back. You need to be there for it to greet Ajihad." And so Aragon and Saphira go and spend a lot of time waiting for Ajihad, Murtagh, and company to return. When they finally do, they emerge from this tunnel in the mountain, and after a few moments, there's this flurry of motion, and Aragon sees that there are more orcs coming out of this tunnel and attacking and ambushing Ajihad, Murtagh, and their soldiers. And they all are getting cut up and killed, and it ends up being a final stand with Murtagh and Ajihad kind of, and the twins, who we'll talk about in a minute, getting kind of in this final stand against all these orcs. Aragon and Saphira are rushing to get there. They're trying to get there to rescue their friends. And before they can reach their side, there's another flurry of motion. There's some sort of strange smoke that arises from the ground and completely obscuring everything going on. And when the smoke clears, the orcs are all gone or dead, and Ajihad is lying broken, bloody, and cut up among the corpses of a number of Urgals that he just slew. Aragon and Saphira arrive at his side just in time to hear his final words. Ajihad says to Aragon, "Whatever you do, do not let the Varden fall into chaos. They must remain strong." And it's a very tragic moment. And, of course, Aragon thinks that, and Ajihad passes away in that moment. And Aragon is mourning this great man's death, which I have to say, Ajihad's death is really unfortunate because in the first book, he was one of the few characters I really, really liked. We didn't see him all that much, but I thought he was a really well done character, to be honest, for the most part. But now he's dead. And more mysteriously, we find out that the twins, again, we'll talk about them in a second, and Murtagh have vanished as well. And it seems that they were dragged off into these tunnels. Aragon's elf crush, Arya, arrives, and Aragon asks her to pursue the orcs through the tunnels and see if she can find out what happened to Murtagh and the twins. She eventually returns, and she's got some random cast-off pieces of armor of Murtagh's, as well as a bloody robe of one of the twins. And it seems that they were killed, stripped of their belongings, and thrown off a cliff. Jormungandr, Ajihad's second in command, returns with a bunch of soldiers, and they take Ajihad's corpse back toward Trondheim, the dwarven city, to begin preparations for Ajihad's burial, as well as beginning the process of choosing a new leader for the Varden. Now, let's talk about the twins for just a second. The twins, for those who don't remember, were the two incredibly obviously evil bald dudes who pretty much spent their entire time on screen in the first book saying, look, we are so evil. So if you're wondering, hey, are they evil? Yes. The answer is yes.
That's pretty much like if there's ever a moment in this series where you go, is he evil? Yes, he is.
And that's the thing. I cannot think of a single character who, in any real way, surprises us in that way. Like, it's pretty much entirely, if someone looks bad, they probably are bad. It's like at the beginning of Aragon, there was this scene where there's Aragon's in a bar, and he sees these two travelers who are sympathetic to the evil empire. And of course, they look ugly as sin. One of them's got a really fat face and like a skinny body, and the other one's all deformed. And of course, they're bad guys. That's pretty much how it goes in this series. If somebody looks bad, they probably are.
In their defense, though, it's also kind of true for Harry Potter. Like, you can usually tell just by the way someone's name's pronounced whether or not they're a bad guy. Although I guess it's not necessarily true. Sirius Black is like kind of a big deal. Like, you think, oh, he's super evil, and he's not.
Well, but that's an example
Draco
of
Malfoy,
playing with those
Lucius
expectations.
Malfoy. What's that girl's name in Slytherin?
Oh,
Like the girl that just her name sounds as big and burly as she is.
it's not Romilda Vane, is it?
Well,
No.
yeah, Romilda
She's a
Vane.
Ravenclaw,
There you go.
isn't
That's
she?
a perfect example right there too. Romilda Vane. Like you just know by name. Okay, this girl's not a good character.
Yeah.
But mind you, Harry Potter is better. But that in and of itself doesn't necessarily have to be a problem if you make it interesting. You know what I mean? But he doesn't. Like instead of it being like, oh, Romilda Vane, interesting name, interesting character, interesting dynamic with her, kind of even though she's bad, like it's what she does is interesting. You know what I mean? Where that doesn't even happen in this book. Everyone's not interesting.
So, with the first chapter out of the way, I have to say probably my favorite thing about this so far, and this is going to apply for most of the beginning of the book, is as far as exposition is concerned, I think it is handled way better, way better than in Aragon. Because most of the exposition is handled in a natural conversational way that actually progresses the plot, rather than being moments where the plot kind of stops for a character to explain a bunch of backstory.
Yeah.
Which happened frequently in Aragon. And granted, that, kind of like you said earlier, in a sense, the first book is kind of the place where some of that kind of has to happen. But the first chapters of Aragon, we have, not to mention all the traveling chapters with Brahm where he tells us everything. We have two separate chapters where Brahm explains a whole bunch of dragon stuff to Aragon, either directly or indirectly through his storytelling, and explaining the backstory to us. And I think that in this case, I think most of the exposition is handled better because we're not told all over again exactly what happened. It's referenced, but it's done so in a way that it's more focused on the consequences of what happened and how they affect what's going on now, rather than explaining what happened all over again. Now, I will note, though, that all three of the sequels, Eldest, Brissinger, and Inheritance, all have opening sections that kind of summarize everything that happened, everything important that happened in the previous books. And that's probably part of why this is handled as elegantly as it is, because there is a place where that's kind of done more ham-fistedly, but I like it. I like the way that it's handled. I like the way the exposition's handled, for sure.
Man, I hate this. I hate this whole chapter. And it just, I don't know, to me it feels ham-fisted. Like, what's his name? I forget. I can never say his name correctly.
Ajahad?
Ajahad, that guy. He dies. He's a big deal, right? Like, Saphira notices like that he's about to die, and I don't know. Like, maybe they didn't clarify the distance enough for me. But if you're a goddamn dragon, right? Like, you're gonna get instead of just going like tensing up when you see Urgles, and they're going for Ajahad, the single most important leader in the entire game. You know what I mean? You're going to, you're gonna fly, and you're gonna fly right at him, and you're gonna go like, no, Ajahad! Like, I'm gonna try to save the shit out of you, even if I can't, because I'm Saphira, the hot-headed, red-blooded dragon who just does things on impulse. And she didn't do that. You know what I mean? Like,
does things on impulse and yet is always right.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, there you go. And then, okay, moving on from that though, like, Ajahad's death is like the most unimportant thing I've ever seen in this game. Or not in this game, in this book. Like, it happens. Like, it is important, don't get me wrong. Like, it is an important plot relevance wise. However, the actual event of him dying It's like the Urgles came and he died, and there was 5 Urgles he killed. Like, okay, all right, like there's no emotion, there's nothing happens. Like Aragorn and Saphira and Arya like go right over to his goddamn corpse. And they're not like, no, Ajahn, why'd you have to die? Like, like there's no emotion, there's no like anything. That's just like, this is gonna be a real shitter for the Varden. Damn. You know what I mean? Like,
I mean, there is a bit about, Aragorn's like, Aragorn's got his tears and Arya's face is like horrified. But no, you're right in that because there's no build up. Like, I feel like this chapter kind of is the way it is because, I mean, yes, it does get the plot moving, but it also feels like just kind of, it feels like these characters are being ushered away. It's like oh, wait a minute, no, you guys aren't supposed to be here. Shoo. And it just happens. We don't even see Murtagh. We don't even see him ever. Like, the only time we see him in this book until much, much later is a distant glimpse of him standing like alongside Ajahad as they're leaving the tunnel, but they're like a mile away or something. Like, and so because we don't even spend any time with Murtagh or spend any time with Ajahad in this book, there's no build up. There's no, it feels almost consequenceless because in a practical sense, it kind of is. It's just, oh yeah, well, it wouldn't make sense to have Murtagh go with Aragorn on his trip in this book. And, oh yeah, we've got to have that Star Wars moment at the end. And, oh yeah, I want Naswada to become a thing. And so it's just like, shoo. It really does feel like they're kind of being ushered out of the room without any kind of ceremony or any kind of real... For the reader, yes, there's all sorts of ceremony that comes from this. But as far as the reader is concerned, we have no reason to care in this book about Ajahad or Murtagh because we literally never spend any time with them. We get like 2 lines from Ajahad in this book.
Dude, for real. For fucking real, though. Like... God damn. It's to me, like, what it feels like is, well, first off, Aragorn gets briefly sad for Murtagh, following all this.
Yeah.
And it reminds me of, like, the nature of this book and, like, its weakest form. Which is, the fact that it is basically a self-insert. Like, when I read this book, or any of these books, it feels like Paolini is the DM of his own D&D session where he is playing every single character and making all the rolls. And so, of course, his character is the best one. And, of course, his character, everything that he ever wants to have happen to that character happens. And, of course... Murtagh, who's like the less cool version of his hero, just doesn't quite make it. Like, of course, it's like, it's annoying. It's childish. It's empty. Like, I don't know. I was never really keen on this. It's like, I don't know how to put it. It's
yeah.
So when Murtagh, like, so for instance, an example of this is when he goes to the cave city, Tronchim, and Murtagh is just immediately just ushered out of the story at that moment. Like, it would be a bigger deal if Murtagh was taken from us in this chapter, if, I don't know, we kind of had him in the entire last quarter of the book. But we don't. He's practically MIA. And he gives you a brief, like, oh, he's having a great time. He's eating lots of food, reading books, and Murtagh is just like, oh yeah, this is fun because I'm written it, and it's supposed to be fun because I'm a character in this book series. You know what I mean? Like, it just ends up being nothingness. Like, it ends up being, okay, Murtagh, the only threat to my character, the only threat to the coolness of my character, the only threat to, basically... Like, because he's the Ron Weasley, right? He's the Ron Weasley to Aragon's Harry Potter. But thing is, J.K. Rowling like makes a point at not making Ron just the side guy. You see what I'm saying? Like, he's not the C to Aragon's A, Arya's and Arya's B. Like, say that one character in what's the movie called? National Treasure. You see what I'm saying?
Oh.
Like, there's
Yeah.
the A, Nicolas Cage. There's B, random hot girl who's hot and around, and really like is not necessary at all. C, there's the smart computer kid, right? And he's important, right? He offers some sort of skill in that movie, but he's the C character. A and B get together, and C is just kind of left to exist and kind of be comedic. Um, and so Murtagh isn't comedic, but he's nonetheless like in the way, right? Because because if he's not comedic, if he is a good warrior and he is all these things, um, then when he's around, you've actually got to write it, right? You've got to actually write this character. You've got to create depth, and you've got to create him growing, and actually include a story in which your main character, Aragon, isn't the fuckboy of the universe, and who gets everything he wants. Maybe that's the wrong term, but like, because maybe I'm not sure if fuckboy is the right term there, but like, he's not the. I mean, the golden boy is a better term, where he just gets whatever he wants, whenever he wants. As you will see, like, well, this happens earlier in the, as soon as he comes to the Varden, there's kind of Niswada, and she's kind of sort of flirty with him, and then he's into Arya, and then a couple chapters later, there's the sorceress girl, and then he's literally been here for like 3 days, and shit's happening, and so anyway, like, Paolini has a thing where, okay, if this gets in the way of my character being the total cool badass, at least in these books, that I want him to be, then I'll get rid of it. And you could say, well, he's wounded, and so he's not being a badass there, but nonetheless, like, he doesn't want, he never lets Aragon be rivaled except by anything other than his love interest, and even when he is rivaled, which there is a rival in this book later on, like, it's only such that he can totally, utterly humiliate his rival later, and then be the supreme badass. You see what I'm saying? Like, all of the shit that happens in this book later, where everything sucks, is only just so that later on, when Aragon is now just this transcendental Superman, he's even cooler than ever. He's like, I don't know, I just don't like it. It's like he wrote Murtagh in and then didn't want him at all in the story. Like, that's what I feel is what happens. Like, Murtagh is there, he saves Aragon, they go on a goddamn road trip together, and then the moment he is not useful to Aragon, he is destroyed from the story for like until the 4th book, and you're supposed to like care for this character when you never even had a chance to say hi. I don't know. I don't like it. I don't know. Yeah. Anyway.
Well, thank you so much for joining us for the first episode of Eldest, everybody. Be sure and join us tomorrow for an episode of Twilight, and the next day for the next episode of Eldest, Chapter 2, The Council of Elders. Until then, book Blitz.
Back Blitz.